Guys, welcome back to HypnoVision Studios. Today, I'm going to connect some dots for you that I'm sure that you have not seen anyone else do. What do these four things have in common? The torus or torus field, which is an electromagnetic field. The Torah, which is from the Jewish mysticism, and tarot cards. And the last thing being the black sun. Yes, that's right. We're going to discuss these things, but I'm going to show you symbolically the hidden links between these things. So let's start with the first one. What is a torus field? It is a geometric and energetic structure shaped like a donut. Energy flows in through one pole and circulates around the center and exits the other. It is found in nature. Magnetic fields, galaxies, atoms, and even the human heart and the electromagnetic field. Symbol of infinite flow, unity, and self-sustaining creation. Now, guys, it's no secret if you've been watching my channel for any time now, you know for months I talked about the heart being the largest electromagnetic field in the body. Interestingly enough, when we look at sacred geometry and when we look back through the many cultures of human history, the heart chakra in the Hindu system, basically coming from the eastern parts of the world, the heart chakra symbol is the six-pointed star, which also to me, when you give it depth, it becomes the Merkaba. Now, today's topic is not about that, but it is very important here because when we look at the visual field of the human eye, the human eyes, there is the overlap of red and blue, and there is symbolically a star right in our visual field. So the Torah, which is the next thing, it is the sacred text of Judaism, the first 5 books of Moses, and the root word is yarah. Hebrew means to flow or to point the way. Very interesting how energy flows in a torus field, and the Torah from the Jewish meanings is to flow or to point the way. The Torah is seen as divine instruction that flows from source into human consciousness. Now, my last video, I talked about the 33 being mirrored and equaling a figure 8, which is the infinity symbol. I find this to be very, very interesting. So, it also represents cosmic law, order, and moral structure. Somebody needs to let them know this. Okay, so next we have the tarot meaning. I'm not talking about the tarot community. I'm just talking about the meaning of tarot. It is a symbolic deck of cards used for introspection, divination, and spiritual guidance. It consists of 22 Major Arcana, archetypal forces, and 56 Minor Arcana. It reflects the journey of the soul through the cycles of evolution, much like the hero's journey or the spiral of consciousness. Very interesting. I'm going to load this video full of all kinds of graphics, and hopefully as this video goes on, I can start to really highlight and show you how these things on surface don't look like they're connected, but symbolically they very much are. We think of the six-pointed star, we think about the flag of Israel, and it is blue. I find this to be very interesting because when we reference back to the heart chakra, it is also that same six-pointed star. Most people say that is the Star of David, but is it really the Star of David? Because there are other people out there that say that David never existed, much like the mythology of King Solomon, right? Soul of man. Soul of man. Let's move forward. So obviously on surface, all three of these share the root sound, tor, which appears across many languages. It means to turn, twist, spiral, rotate. In Latin means torus, swelling, bulge, ring. Law of guidance in Hebrew is what Torah means. It is instruction of divine law. Wheel of journey in esoteric terms. This is tarot, often associated with rota, wheel in Latin. Suggests an ancient shared concept of cyclical motion, divine law, and energetic flow. So cyclical motion is that twisting effect, right? You'll see a bunch of symbolism when you look into the Hermetics, the Gnostics, the ancient text of culture itself. You'll see so much symbolism. And when you start to look into the occult things, people will say this is all dark stuff. This is satanic. This is it's that. But to really understand it does not mean that you're seeking something out of ill will or bad intentions. You're seeking to understand what something means. And Carl Jung has been quoted many times as saying that the soul speaks through symbolism. So learning to recognize symbols and what they mean and interpret why they show up in our lives, the patterns and how often these things are showing up can really offer us a bit of self-reflection. And that is why some people use tarot cards as an introspection tool. Some people quite literally believe that spirit can literally throw the card out and that is it. That is, it's much like one of those 8 balls, right? You ask the 8 ball, you shake it and you turn it over and whatever it says is whatever, right? I don't really buy into that, but that's just my opinion. That's just me. I believe in my self-talk and I believe in the feelings. Speaking of feelings, Anchor the Feeling. Yes, you can buy that shirt on my store, link below. Very interesting how the Torus field itself is electromagnetic energy. And when it comes to things like Nikola Tesla and the Tesla coil and the history of our modern culture, so to speak, post-World War II, when we have NASA, we have, dare I say, a round Earth. Now, as I understand it, you can't talk about certain topics on YouTube. Guys, it's very interesting when you start to dig into some of this stuff and you start to see for yourself that much of history is fabricated. Much of history is hearsay. Much of history was written after war and after the dispersal of mass people, right? We see this happening again because history repeats itself. And we see how mass migration changes the cultures. It was said in the early 1900s that America was the melting pot of all of these different cultures coming for the land of opportunity. And they were greeted by the Statue of Liberty, which is the unconquered sun, right there in plain sight. Very interesting. It is all around us, guys. Once you start to look and see the symbolism, and once you start to look and understand what the symbolism truly means, take this for example, sacred geometry. When we look at the old cathedrals, the windows, right? It is hidden right there in plain sight. The old text, the old hymns of the old world, there was very little words. It was all tones. It was all frequencies, and it would go up into these domes of these cathedrals, and it would vibrate all around. This is the law of vibration. It reorganizes the cells in the body. It reorientates the cells. As it turns out, Nikola Tesla, not the modern Tesla, built an earthquake machine, a seismic machine that was able to shake a building to its core. This was vibration. Nikola Tesla wanted to give the world free energy. But I will tell you something, when we're talking about magnetic fields, Torus fields, it is everywhere in nature, all the way from the apple to built right into our fabric. Everywhere you look, you can cut a leaf on a plant and view it with a certain lens on the camera and still see the energetic outline of a leaf. Very interesting. So as we move on, I want to share a few more things with you. The geometric symbology of all of this. The Torus visually mirrors cycles of involution and evolution. involution and evolution. So this, the yin and the yang, the black and the whites, when we watch this moving, it is a never-ending cycle of going in and coming out, going in and coming out. It is a infinity of energy that is always transforming. You cannot destroy it. It only transcends and descends and ascends up and down, just like a sine wave. We look at sine waves and they're going up and down. We measure by the seismic activity. Sine. That word has been played out so many times in the human culture. Sin, right? In the biblical and mainstream Christianity, we see sin as this thing that you have to be forgiven, right? But it's honestly, it's the ability to forgive oneself for missing the mark, as Neville Goddard describes this. Because if I hold on to something that happened 20 years ago, who pays the price for it? If I hold on to something someone else did to me from 20 years ago, and I can't seem to let it go, who pays the price? That person or me? If I'm the one holding on to it, it is my body, my emotions, and then eventually my mind that will pay the price for holding on and attaching myself to something of the past. And I pay that price in the present, which creates an emotional debt within the body. Emotions is how we pay for things in life. It is the emotional credit. And I've known this for about 2 years now, like having my eyes opened. And I will really shift this to the viewpoint of understanding a lack mentality versus an abundant mentality. When we look at things as positive or negative, right? You can't go through life and just have this fantasy of life is just rainbows and sunshine. We have to understand that not every day is a good day, but also there is a difference in having this dominant negative outlook of life versus a positive outlook versus an optimist where you say that, yes, there are going to be some bad days, but the future is bright because my long-term forecast is a positive one. We also have to understand through the meaning of electricity that it takes a positive and it takes a negative and it takes neutral in order for energy to flow. So when we look at the Torah and it says means to flow or to point the way. And when we look at the torus field of the energy flowing from inside to outside, this is a never-ending cycle that is infinite. It goes on forever. But one of the things when it comes to sacred geometry is the tree of life from the Kabbalah, and it is directly tied to the Torah, and it can be mapped over a toroidal field. Energy descending from Kepter, the crown, to Moloch, the kingdom, and returning upward. Very interesting. The symbology of all of this can really tell us a lot when we look at it and we understand on a very deep soul level that which is hard to put into words. Everything is built right into our reality, and our soul is always speaking to us through symbols, through repeating numbers, and as Neville calls it, the father and the wife, meaning the father, the son, and the wife, the soul, Mother Earth in that manner, right? Because Mother Earth, you can plant seeds in Mother Earth. And Mother Earth is such a giving, divine mother that no matter how many wars we start on this planet, she continues to support us. And the sun continues to rise. And the symbology of all of this is external and internal. So when we look at the toroidal fields, how it is internal and external, and it's always going in this infinity of cycles of life and death and rebirth. Life, death, rebirth. And when we start to look at the black sun and we start to bring this into the equation, something very interesting starts to click. As it turns out, the symbolism of the black sun, many people know this as from Nazi Germany. And it's very interesting because Hitler and his upper ranks of his military people and his closest people around him, they were very much into esoteric things. And then we understand, like we're talking about the Torah, which is Jewish mysticism, is very interesting when we see the connection of all this. But just like that Star of David, that six-pointed star goes way back beyond that time frame. Just like how Jesus was a character of 2,500 years ago, but human existence far exceeds 2,500 years ago. Matter of fact, you can't explain how the pyramids got there, can you? But they're there, you can see it, you can physically experience those pyramids. They resonate at a 33 hertz tone or resonant frequency. The 33 is such an interesting number, which is the year that Jesus died. He was 33 years old, by the way. For those who may not know, it's very interesting that the last name of Christ, Christol, Christall, Christian, within, kingdom within. If the heart is the largest electromagnetic field and Christ is within, Christian, what does that tell you? What is that trying to point out to you? If you expand your electromagnetic field, you open your heart up, suddenly you're opening yourself up to new experiences. You're expanding your electromagnetic field well beyond that tiny one that the brain produces. Now, yes, mentalism is something that I talked about recently. It is very important to understand what mentalism is. It is how we read what is coming out of this electromagnetic field. So those symbols, right? We are always influencing things around us. Likewise, we can be influenced by things in our environments. I'll give you a few personal examples for me that I experienced when I first started to come to awakening and awareness and really opening my third eye, because people around me thought I was crazy. They absolutely thought I was just talking gibberish. And what I experienced was nothing short of supernatural and mystical. So when I read things like Jewish mysticism and I see things like the Torus field, and not to mention there is a zodiac sign, the Torus. Very interesting. How can you just brush this off as just nonsense, right? Sure, you can read about history all day long, but I excelled in history and I flunked every other grade growing up. But history was one of those things that I did not have to study, and I excelled at history. Maybe it's because the brain is a pattern recognition machine. Maybe that dyslexic part of my brain that's always turning things around and allowing me to see things that other people didn't see. I used to think I was stupid. I used to think that because I was in learning disabled classes that there was something wrong with me. Like I turned my letters around backwards when I would write words. Girls would pickle me when I would write little love letters back in the day. You know, but as it turns out, it's really a superpower because of the left and right paradigm, the neurodivergence, right? When we look at the field, right, we have the center right there where the pineal gland is, where those crystals are releasing electricity. We can put the infinity symbol right here. Left and right brain, always churning away right in the center. And if we flip that, it's turning this way. Oscillation, I suppose, but the center or 0 point energy, it's coming from the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is what is creating those electrical impulses. the alchemy of the body, the chemicals, the exchange or transformation of energy, which is what allows us to create our internal vision inside of our mind's eye. You know, it's lost on me that the word imagination does indeed begin with the letter I, and it contains magi, which means three. You know, last year when I was talking about some of this stuff, it was really hard for me to put things into words, and I felt like people around me were mocking the, pardon my French, but I will also show you something else from my semen retention series where I talked about the sun within me, the inner sun. I sat down here in this basement almost 2 years ago, and I've got a notepad in there where I wrote about the inner sun within me, and I wrote about cycles. I didn't make that up out of thin air. I literally remember while I was sitting here, hearing over and over the phrase, burn bright, baby, burn bright, baby, burn bright, baby. And I had this mystical experience of my own where it was like I was going inward into myself, such a deep symbolic meaning that was hard for me to interpret. Now, when it comes to the electromagnetic field, when we are in close proximity with other people, that unseen field is overlapping. And a few years ago, before I had my awakening, I had no idea. I couldn't tell you one thing from another. But when things started happening to me, when that field of mine expanded, right, I started to have a lot of dreams. I started to get these subtle nudges that were pointing me and pushing me into certain directions and actually showing and revealing things to me that at the time I couldn't understand, but later I watched it play out in real time. Now, Neville Goddard speaks about fourth dimensional thinking. I take this back to the heart chakra. It is the fourth chakra. And in astrology, the fourth house is Cancer. It is family. Very interesting. So some of the things that happened to me was getting around certain people while I was completely relaxed. When I got close to a anonymous individual, I could feel this pulse coming off, and it felt like anxiety. It felt like a nervous system, maybe, because that is also electrical impulses. That is the electrical side of the human body. So for the first time in my life, I'm aware of these subtle changes in my environment, and my body is picking it up from the sensory input. It's much like the hair standing up when the atmosphere changes and the storm is coming and you get kind of spooked a little bit and your hair raises. It's almost a mystical, supernatural event. One of the other things that happened to me during that time was I remember laying in the bed one night, and this happened for weeks. One of the things that happened was I kept waking up at 3:33 a.m. The other thing that happened was something that I never told anyone. So this is the first time I'm saying it. I kept experiencing what I could only describe as an energy signature. And it was coming down the hall, trying to make its way back to me. Now, in this energy signature, there was no face. You know, some people would say this is an apparition. This is a soul without a body. I don't really know, to be honest. But what I experienced was almost like an energetic being coming into my bedroom. But what was strange about it was like an old lady. It was like something that I could not describe, which is why I never talked about it. And it scared the living daylights out of me, honestly. So that happened for weeks. And finally, I just got to the point where I just stopped thinking about it. I stopped worrying about it. whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So some people can say that you have an attachment. This is where in the Catholic religions, they talk about people having demon possessions, and you have to in Christ evoke whatever you expel a demon out of a person. I don't really know, but if there is an impression made on the human soul, then I could suppose that the energetic impression or the vibration of that energy could be impressed upon the soul in such a way that once you become aware of it, it's in your energy field. That's a saying that I've heard other people say. When people play in your energy and you are aware, you will be able to pick up those subtle changes. When I say this, I mean like mental manipulation, emotional manipulation. People whose actions and words are not in alignment. That's what I mean. And what I'm trying to point out about all of this is once you become very attuned, right? We call these tuning forks. If I have two that are tuned to the same frequency and I strike one of them, the other one will start to vibrate simply because it is on the same frequency. And that vibration is a match. And if you want to understand sacred geometry, learn cymatics. Cymatics shows us what sound looks like. And when we understand what a harmonic sound looks like versus a distorted sound, we can understand the visual aspect of it. Then we can match this to the tone of someone's voice. Is their voice in harmony? Is it in alignment? Are their actions doing what they say they're going to do or how they are acting? The saying that life is a theater, everyone is acting. We all wear masks. And that is very true because during that time when I wrote about the sun within me, I also wrote about taking my mask off and shining my light. That was well over 3 years ago now. And here I am chugging away making YouTube videos about esoteric things and Torus fields and the Torah and Jewish mysticism and putting it on YouTube. I've really ruffled a lot of feathers around people close to me. And I've also picked up on things and exposed things to people that was not ill will or not ill intended. But if I pick up on it and I talk about it, it's not meant to be ill intended, so to speak. So let's get to the black sun. So the black sun, as I said earlier, most people know this as the Nazi Germany flag, right? But the interesting thing about this is the black sun is a powerful and layered symbol that appears in mythology, alchemy, mysticism, and modern occultism. And later it was misappropriated by extremist ideologies. The esoteric meaning is Sol Niger, black sun. In alchemy, it symbolized the Nigredo stage, the first phase of transformation where matter and spirit are broken down, purified, and prepared for rebirth. It represents death before rebirth, inner darkness, or the shadow aspect of the self that must be faced before enlightenment. Must be faced before enlightenment. Let me get up on this camera, guys. This that you're witnessing on camera is feelings. My feelings are energetic in this moment because I enjoy telling the truth. All my life, people wanted the truth from me. And what I'm getting ready to tell you was a real life experience for me. So when I talk about the black sun, I know this firsthand because what this doesn't tell you is the black sun symbolically is an ego death, or what some people refer to as a dark night of the soul. It is when you face the inner darkness, right? And to understand this in the esoteric and astrology meanings, that is your dark moon Lilith. And for me, mine is in Virgo. So that's where I learned why I was such a perfectionist about certain things in my own life. Why I would knock my own towers down, because I wasn't good enough. It wasn't perfect enough. I couldn't appease everyone in the world around me. So therefore, inherently, something must have been wrong with me. Very much a perfectionist with a lot of things. So understanding your black moon Lilith will help you to understand the deepest, darkest hidden aspects of yourself. And whatever your sign is where you will start to find some of those answers. Now, when you look at astrology and you look at the different zodiac signs, you have to understand that you inhabit all 12 of those signs. Those 12 signs plus you makes 13. Now get this, 1 plus 3 equals 4. 4. I take you back to the fourth chakra, which the symbol for that is the six-pointed star. If that doesn't give you the same kind of chills I just showed you on camera, I don't know what will, because you can't really ignore it once you see it. Also, the zodiac sign. Look at it as going around your head like this, the zodiac sign, because you are the missing one in the center. The zodiac sign, there's 12 signs, there's 12 months, there's 12 disciples of Jesus, and there's 12 cranial nerves. The nervous system is where the electrical half of the body is. The electrical impulses travel up and down the nervous system. Wow. 12 times 12 equals what? 144? 144,000 only go to heaven. 12 cranial nerves are where? In the head. Inside the head. Heaven, head in. So language is very interesting, because over the many generations of the human experience, it has shifted and twisted and turned and had these slight little adjustments in the pronunciation. But one thing that this signature can never be changed is the tone of voice, the tone or vibration of the body. So once you become awakened, once you become aware, once you are actually seeing with your third eye, the mind's eye, and understanding what is coming up out of the soul. I talked about doing shadow work several times on this channel. Shadow work to me is like what is down in the basement. What is the deepest, darkest corners of my basement that haven't been touched in many years. And just how the plants and trees pull up stuff from the ground through the roots, and eventually it ends up into the trees. If you poison the roots, you poison the fruit of the tree. But that first has to go into the ground, soak into the darkness of the soul, get sucked up through the roots, and eventually goes all the way back up to the top of the tree and works its way out through the branches and poisons the fruit. Very interesting, because the as above, so below applies here. When we start to nurture what is down in the soul, we start to do what? We're bringing up good nutrients into the top of the tree of life. So if we look at those 12 cranial nerves sitting up here in the brain, and we understand how those 12 cranial nerves go all the way down and come all the way back up, and we see how energy flows through the body, we see how our DNA is twisted. There's two ladders to this, Jacob's ladder. If you take DNA, untwist it and flatten it out, it looks like a ladder. Two parallel strings that have little ties to them. Very interesting. So going back to the black sun for just a minute, In alchemy, it symbolizes life, death, and rebirth. It often describes a hidden sun within or spiritual illumination born from darkness. From darkness comes light. From the black sun burns invisibly, representing the hidden source of inner power and transformation. Now, when you look at, guys, I'm going to write this on paper because this is one of those things that I hear that YouTube is not too fond about. But when you look at this, this will make people's heads explode. This will make people like go into a meltdown. But I want to share a few things. When you look at maps, old maps of this, you will often see depicted right in the center a large magnetic stone. And very interestingly enough, the human eyeball has a black dot in the center where that sunlight and all other light comes into the eyeball and it cannot escape. It goes through the lens or the dome, the firmament, which separates the water in the body from the vapor of the outside air. Or if you're swimming, it separates the inner water of the body from the outer water that you're surrounded by. Also very interesting, because of the pineal gland, because of the toroidal fields, that connection is unseen, but light enters into that eye and is converted to matter. Matter is able to affect matter, but only once it's alive. In ancient traditions, including Norse, Egyptian, and Hermetic thought, referred to dual suns as visible physical sun and an invisible spiritual sun that nourishes the soul. In Hermeticism, the inner sun was linked to the divine spark or source of consciousness. Some esoteric writers connected the black sun to Saturn. Saturn. Symbolizing deep time, hidden knowledge, and cycles of death and rebirth. Now, I've talked about Saturn. In astrology, Saturn is actually my ruling planet when you look at my birth chart. Saturn has such a strange north pole that it can be seen two different ways. If you look at it on surface, it has 6 sides. But if you look at it with a 3D depth, you can see a square box. Some refer to it as a black box, a black cube. And when I start to draw the connection between electromagnetism and the magnetic fields, this is where I saw the Kabbalah, right? We see people going around in circles. They go around and around the Mecca. And what's very interesting about that was searching for graphics one day, I seen a magnet standing up and the little particles around it, the way they were organized by the electromagnetic field, reminded me of Mecca and how people go around that black box. So I put the two images side by side so I can see them physically with my eyes. And I was like so blown away by what I was seeing with my eyes, just following a hunch of curiosity, much like taking the 33 or 33 and mirroring it, because my dyslexic mind was already taking one of those and turning it around. I could see it, but nobody else around me could see it. So was I really truly a learning disabled kid growing up because I turned letters around backwards and I struggled with spelling? So do you believe that witchcraft is real? Do you believe that people can cast spells? I used to think a lot of that stuff was just utter nonsense. But once I started to awaken to much of this, I started to realize, especially with things like reverse psychology, where people will say the opposite, right? Opposition. If I say the sky is blue, someone would say, no, the sky is not blue. The sky is red. And then want to argue over that. Argumentative mindsets. Or if I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, someone else will oppose that idea because they feel it is not for me. Very interesting. So, yes, I sucked at spelling as a kid, but now I'm quite versed in spelling, quite versed in understanding how affirmations or repeating affirmations is like brainwashing yourself. Gnostics, hypnosis. When we enter into the conscious brainwaves, which we are always in, we are ascending and descending in consciousness. The upper chambers, the gamma, the higher brainwave states, is known as superconscious gamma brainwaves, fast moving, while theta and delta are very slow. In fact, there are many of the teachers out there who understand the subconscious reprogramming, even Neville Goddard, to immobilize the body into a kin of sleep, where you are so relaxed that the tension inside of the body is released. And from that point, you can change anything. You can plant new seeds, so to speak. And what this is doing is allowing you to bypass the physical body reactions. You are still consciously awake. This is like having one of those dreams where you wake up, but the body is still asleep. When we wake up too fast, there is that changeover between the subconscious and the conscious mind where that doorway is open for a little bit. This has scientifically been proven. And during that time, we are still having that connection between the two, but it slowly starts to close. And then as we drift back to sleep, there is this handoff where the conscious mind starts to shut down for the evening as we fall into a deep slumber. You either dream a lot or you don't dream at all, depending on how connected you are. So when you get out into the sunlight and you increase serotonin, you increase the messaging or the signal from one cell to the next cell. There are 60,000 cells in the human body, collective conscious. All of these cells are working on your behalf. All of these cells are performing tasks, and all of these cells are doing it without the conscious thought. So these are coming from the subconscious. And I find it to be very interesting. In the occult philosophy, the black sun represents the void, the source of creation, or the cosmic womb from which all light and form emerge. It can symbolize the unseen forces in the universe, the dark energy that fuels existence, and mystics interpret it as the heart of the Torus field. The still point in the center of energetic flow, connecting the concepts of infinite return and self-regeneration. Guys, I cannot make this up. Why would I? Why would I go through all this trouble to make these videos absolutely for free? Why would I go through the trouble of possibly alienating myself from people I know because I sound like a crazy kook on camera? It's very, very interesting when you think about emotions and you think about logic and you think about creativity and you think about abundant thinking versus lack mentality. We even have Superman, right? Where does he get his power from? The sun. What is his weakness? Kryptonite. What color is kryptonite? Green. What color is the heart chakra? Green. So Superman's weakness symbolically is a green crystal. His palace, his solitude, of the fortress of solitude, is crystals. We are crystalline structures because of what? The crystals in the pineal gland, the physio effect, the physio, however you want to pronounce it, pecan, tomato, pronunciation. I find this to be so interesting. Alchemy, the chemical mixture, the exchange of energy, the transformation, because energy cannot be destroyed. It only transforms from one state to another. So with this very understanding, once you understand how all of this stuff is moving, you have the conscious choice to say, I am going straight to the emotion that I wish to experience. Happiness, love, joy, peace, fulfillment. I choose to dwell in these emotions without the 20-step program, without the life coaching, without this and without that. I want to focus my attention, the focal point of my thoughts, onto the emotional state I desire. I desire to feel gratitude. I desire to feel the emotions of happiness. So I'm going to focus on what that feels like, not how to get there. The why is the focus on the feeling. I want to focus myself on happiness. The how, if we are trying to do this in reverse, we are saying, how do I get to happiness? And then I write out 10,000 things that must happen before I can be happy. This is why consumerism is a cancer on the human experience, because you have to continuously consume all of these physical things of the outside world to be happy. You have to keep up with the Joneses, as the saying goes. The bigger house, the fancier car, an extra boat in the yard, plus a camper, plus all this other stuff, so I can feel good about myself, but be so empty on the inside because I have not overflowed my emotions from the inner state. We are trying to feel everything from the outside in, and that's backwards. It is reverse. It is the law of opposition, or the law of opposites, because life is indeed duality, that positive and negative, and right down the center is neutral. Very interesting, guys. Very, very interesting indeed. The zodiac signs can be seen as guides. Does not mean because something is in your zodiac sign that it is true. These are different aspects of these different signs. The alignment of the different planets and the stars affect or influence the energetic atmosphere of this planet at any given time. So your date of birth is like a timestamp for how the energy was aligned. And you understand this, you open Pandora's box. You can experience a dark night of the soul and then a rebirth and enlightenment. But first, you have to forgive yourself. Because forgiveness is not for people out there. Forgiveness is for you. Because through the awareness, you realize everything comes from imagination. How you see people, how you perceive them still comes from your mind. You are trying to get a read on someone. So if you want to understand how energy works, why people read cards instead of reading people, there's your answer. Because reading cards is just entertainment. Reading people is the real energy readings. Listening to people is how we attune to that said energy and how we decode that said energy. Whether or not we are in a frequency or a vibrational match or not. If it's a match, we resonate. If it does not, there is no match. So if there is another tuning fork that is not in the same frequency as this one, and I strike this one, nothing is going to happen to the other one. So 3 years ago, when I was having these dreams, I understood something that, again, I could not express at the time because I did not know how. We understand in religion the Holy Ghost. We think the Holy Ghost is real, but we think apparitions are fairy tales. Unless you're highly superstitious and you like to watch spooky stuff. But the fact of the matter is this. When people are projecting their energy towards you, you are either a vibrational match, which means you will resonate, pick up, and be able to read it, or it will pass through you like the Holy Ghost because there is no frequency match. And I understood this. And when I became consciously aware, the only way to test that theory is to put it into practice. And when someone got angry with me, instead of responding as a match, right? When two of these are matched, they amplify the signal. They resonate, and one can cause the other one to vibrate in the same frequency. When it is not, there is no match. The energy goes out. There is nothing for it to bounce off of or to be amplified and sent back. The short phrase came to my mind. Allow it to move through me as if I were the Holy Ghost. So those times where I felt like I was dead, living life after death, perhaps I was in a state of inner flux, of inner reincarnation or transformation, rebirth. You know, Christian people will say, I've been reborn, but I don't believe in reincarnation. The physical mind is known as the cardinal mind. So when Neville says that the physical man cannot receive what the spiritual man does, then you understand that if you don't believe in something, then how can it be so? Test the theory and see if it's pleasing with God. Romans 12:2. The patterns of the outside world. The brain, the human brain, is a pattern recognition machine. It is only when we have been programmed by repetition of things of the outside world that we start to accept belief systems, whether true or false, as real. And that makes our reality, our personal reality. And with that, guys, I'll see you on the next one.